This topic today is about procurement of consultancy services. And most of the time, you find that companies like hiring the services of consultants so that the consultants are able to share some of the experiences that they have over the years or some of the knowledge that they have gathered. And this knowledge will help a lot in ensuring that the organization is able to make decisions that are in line with the performance or the general objective of that organization. So procurement of consultancy services refers to the procurement of services or a combination of goods and services to be procured and advisory or intellectual in nature. So the services must be in form of intellectual in nature, where you are going to use a lot of your brains, or you are bringing what you know in the industry or in the field, so that what you know is shared and can be implemented into the organization. So a procuring entity can procure consultancy services only when it does not have internal capacity. So in the event you do not have internal capacity, then you cannot hire the services of a consultant. So you can be required to hire those services because internally you don't have capacity. Then the other thing is the time is not available to do the workload. Sometimes you might be too busy and you don't have the time to do all that work. Therefore, you can decide to hire the services of a consultant. So in consultancy services, we have what is called the terms of reference. And it is important when you are developing the request for a proposal to also have the terms of reference. And the terms of reference is a source document that helps to outline the objectives and scope of the consultancy assignment. So the terms of reference will help you to know exactly what you are going to do or the assignment that is in stake. What are some of the things that you are going to do? What are some of the responsibilities of the various key players when you are doing the consultancy services? It also provides a description of the expected output. What do you want to achieve at the end of the day? It is very, very important. The terms of reference is drafted prior to issuing the request for proposal. So before you issue the request for proposal, you need to have at least developed a terms of reference. So what is the purpose of the terms of reference? Number one is to define the objective of the expected consultancy assignment. So you already know what you expect in terms of consultancy assignment. Once you understand that, it becomes very easy for you to be able to, just a minute. So when you are developing the terms of reference, it clearly defines the objective and the expectation of the assignment that you're going to do. It also outlines Then the other thing is also about the output. So you're able to understand the output in terms of the outcome, what you are supposed to achieve at the end of the consultancy assignment. It also provides an outline for carrying out the evaluation of the received proposal. So you need to understand how are they going to evaluate the proposals or the various requests for proposals once they receive them. Then it also provides the foundation for preparing the resulting contract. So you'll be able to prepare the resulting contract based on the terms of reference. It also gives a basis of the final output of the consultants and how they are going to do everything that they are required to do. Then it provides the process for measuring the performance of the consultancy or consultancy firms. So you need to measure the performance of the consultant. So the terms of reference will help you to be able to do that. So what is the content of the terms of reference? What is the content of the terms of reference? So remember, you need to come up with the terms of reference, and it must have the background of the assignment. What assignment are you going to do? And the background basically breaks down what is expected in that particular consultancy assignment. It also gives a brief vision or a brief statement of the vision of the consultancy, and also gives an introduction of the client. And the client here, remember, it is the organization that requires the services of the consultant. For example, if an organization like Equity today decides to hire the services of a consultant, then Equity Bank will be the client, and they will be requiring the services of the consultant. Then it also gives the scope and approach and methodology that you're going to use during the consultancy assignment. So this will basically give the evaluation criteria that is going to be used, the planned duration for the assignment. Basically, you will know exactly what you're going to do. Then the method that is going to be used. Remember, we have different methods for consultancy services. It will break down some of those methods. Then it will also give the qualification and experience and expertise of the consultant. Remember, for you to become a consultant, you must be qualified for that job, and you must have a lot of experience. Basically, it gives you the breakdown of what you require in terms of the qualification and in terms of the experience. Then what are the deliverables and expected outcomes? So at the end of the day, we need to know, how are you going to achieve your outcome, and what criteria are you going to use to ensure that you achieve some of the deliverables that you need to achieve. Then these deliverables will form the basis of the output or the outcome or the result that is needed by the consultant. And basically, it provides what is called a work plan. So a consultant must have a work plan on how he or she or how that firm is going to achieve what they're expected to achieve. It will also give a proposed budget. Remember, for you to be successful as a consultant, you need to come up with a budget and the money that is required for purposes of ensuring that the project is not going to stop at any given time. So you need to set up an expected budget for your project or your consultancy assignment. Then the issue of governance also is very important. And governance here, we are talking about the roles and responsibilities that are required, so that at least you know this consultant is going to do A, B, and C, so that you are able to plan for it, both in the short run and in the long run. Then the payment schedule is also very important. How are you going to pay your consultant? Are you going to pay your consultant based on the terms set in the terms of reference? Are you going to pay advanced payment, or you are going to pay one-off, or you are going to pay in installments until you finish the final contract? It's very, very important. Or are you going to pay in milestone? Once the consultant finishes milestone 1, you'll pay a certain amount of money up to the last milestone. So it's very important to understand the payment schedule. And the other thing that is very important is any other pertinent information that is required also must be put in the terms of reference. Remember, the terms of reference helps to break down some of the scope of the consultancy assignment or outcome at the end of the day. Then the other thing that is very important when you're dealing with consultancy services is something called expression of interest. Remember, before you even send the request for proposal to the consultants, you need to send an expression of interest, a notice of expression of interest to various consultants. And remember, an expression of interest is a pre-qualification process in procurement of consultancy services. So you need to pre-qualify some of these consultants before you even give them the tender document or the request for proposal document. This is because it helps to avoid cases of wasting a lot of time, because once a consultant expresses interest, then it becomes very easy to deal with some of those consultants. Then the other thing that we are talking about is the issue of the notice of expression of interest. We set out the following. Number one, so when you're writing an expression of interest or a notice inviting expression of interest, it must have the name and address of the procuring entity. Remember, we said the procuring entity is the entity that is buying goods, works, or services, or acquiring goods, works, or services. So don't confuse a procuring entity with a public entity. So those are two different things. And sometimes you might get a question in exams that tells you to give the difference between a procuring entity and a public entity. Then it also must have a brief description of the services being procured. So you need to tell us, what are you procuring? And it must be a brief description of what you are procuring. What services do you require? Then also it gives the qualification requirements. What are some of the qualifications that a consultant needs to have for him or her to be considered to be part and parcel of that assignment? Then where and when the expression of interest must be submitted. So you need to give us the actual venue and the deadline of submission so that the various consultants who are interested can submit their expression of interest so that they can be considered later. So we have different methods that can be used in consultants when selecting consultants. These methods are very critical. So the first one is quality and cost-based selection. This method bases the facts on quality and also the cost of the consultant. So they weigh on the quality, what the consultant is bringing on board, together with the cost aspect of the consultant. So in this method, a consultant firm or contractor is selected based on the weighted assignment to technical and financial criteria of the proposal. So we are looking at both technical and financial criteria. And that is why we are talking about the cost-based. We are basing our facts on cost and at the same time on quality. Those ones are normal features that are included in the cost-based selection. Number one is the expression of interest, the request for proposal document, which must be prepared. It must also be evaluated using the evaluation criteria set. Then you give what is called numerical score, may be applied to the evaluation. The contract is to be awarded to the lowest evaluated tender. Remember, you are evaluating both the technical evaluation together with the financial evaluation. But first of all, you must start with what is called preliminary evaluation. Then you go to technical, then finally you go to financial evaluation, which is the last one. Where numerical score are used, the contract is to be awarded to the bidder with the highest combined score. So if you are using numerical score, you must combine the score of both technical evaluation and the scores of financial evaluation. And the bidder with the highest combined score is then given the tender or the award. Then professionalism must be used to this procurement method. The steps that can be used: preparation of the terms of reference. Then once you prepare, you set a budget or a cost estimate. Then you advertise. Then prepare a short list of consultants. Then once you prepare a short list of consultants, remember you're basing your facts on the interest, the expression of interest that was submitted. So once you do that, then it becomes easy Then later you do what is called preparation and issuing of request for proposal. So you give them the request for proposal, which they have to fill. And once they fill, they must bring it back for purposes of evaluation, where you look at both technical evaluation and financial evaluation. So final evaluation of quality and cost is incorporated in the weighted assigned to qualify the quality of the proposal and the cost as quoted. So when you are selecting using this method, you must check on the quality and you also need to check on the cost. Then later you must publish the award in the website, and you must also debrief both successful and unsuccessful bidders. And remember, we said debriefing basically is sharing information of what went through during the whole process, so that the various bidders or consultants are able to know the criteria that you used when you are selecting the bidder who was given the tender. And you also need to give reasons as to why the unsuccessful consultants were not selected, so that at least they know, so that later they can improve on their processes, or they can improve on the next maybe assignment. The second method is called quality-based selection. This method is appropriate for complex or highly specialized assignments. For example, if you are building a complex building and you require the services of experts, this method is very, very common when you're using it. This selection is based on the quality of the proposal, and that is why it is called quality-based selection. So you're basing your facts on quality. In this method, a consultant with a proposal having the highest combined technical and financial score after evaluation is invited for negotiation prior to the award of the contract. So you must invite the successful consultant so that you can engage further, and maybe the consultant can decide to give you some discounts. Then we also have least cost selection. In this method, a consultancy or a consultant firm is considered based on the price quoted in the proposal. The contract with the lowest evaluated tender is to be awarded the contract. Remember, we are talking about least cost selection. Here we are basing our fact on the least cost. And remember, you are giving the supplier with the lowest evaluated cost. The process is still the same. Then you also have what is called fixed budget selection. Here you are basing your facts on the budget that you've set aside. This method is appropriate only when the assignment is simple and can be precisely defined. So the consultant who submitted the highest ranked technical proposal shall be invited for negotiation. Remember, you are basing your facts on a fixed budget. So you are not supposed to surpass the budget. So you only select the supplier who is within the set budget for that organization. Then we also have what is called single source selection. Single source selection. In this type of consultancy, you narrow down your services to a specific consultant, because you are selecting a consultant who has a particular skill, or maybe because the consultant has expertise or is the only consultant in that area. You can decide to use single source selection. And it is also very common when you're dealing with emergency operation, where you do not have a lot of time to do all those processes. Therefore, you can narrow down on single source selection. But if this method is to discourage competition, then it is not the best method. You cannot be allowed to use single source selection, because it will hinder what is called competition at the end of the day. What are some of the characteristics of single source selection? Number one, it applies to special cases where the procuring entity decides on the best services to obtain from a single source. So if you want the best quality and you believe that supplier has the best quality, you can always narrow down to a single source selection method. The approval for procuring entity and the tender committee. So this method must be approved by the committee in charge of that, or the recommendation of maybe the head of procurement function or the accounting officer or the various committees that are appointed by the accounting officer. The contract is negotiated between the procuring entity and the consultant and must be approved by the tender committee. So it must be approved by a committee. A committee is just a group of people who come together to share their experience and make a decision at the end of the day. The other method is consultant qualification selection. In this method, organizations base their fact on the qualification of the consultant, and they always are specific when they are giving the terms of reference. The consultant must have the following qualification, maybe a master's degree or an undergraduate or a PhD or an experience of a certain number of years. And if that is the case, then the consultant must have those qualifications. Then the other one is individual consultant selection. Individual consultant selection. This method is very common when you're dealing with consultants who are just beginning their consultancy journey. And maybe they have started the company and they want to explore the field of consultancy. So this method is very, very common. Maybe the consultant is in the early stages of consultancy or does not have the relevant experience, but is interested in consultancy. Then we have competitive negotiation. Competitive negotiation. Here, the competitive negotiation is the process in which bidders are given an opportunity to review their prices, having passed the technical requirements. So once you pass the technical requirement, you can look at some of the issues and maybe the price and try to review the price downwards, but not upwards. In the procedure for competitive negotiation, an accounting officer or a procuring entity should identify tenderers affected by time, identify tenderers that quoted price above available budget, or identify the non-suppliers. So you're basing your facts on the price so that you're looking at the competitiveness of the price and basing your fact on the suppliers. And remember, you're also looking at the tie in terms of the combined score. So suppliers who are in that category, you can look at other parameters. Or maybe suppliers, remember, sometimes might tie in terms of their combined score. So if they tie, then you can look at other criteria that can help to assist in selecting a consultant.